Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lay It on the Table, the Southern board gaming podcast that puts the accent on Southern. I can't talk today. I don't know what is going on. But I tell you what, it's one of those days where we're all excited about the return of Gen Con in Indiana, which is a full-throated convention. A lot of new exciting announcements coming out of that. But today, first, as always, James and I like to talk about what's on our table. So James, good morning and welcome. So what's going on with you these days?
Thanks, Joe. It's good to be here. It's a lovely morning. We are, I think, finally done with the infestation of quacks that we've been dealing with. Came back from the beach, and Laura was like, "Well, Sky wanted to play, quacks," and so we had it on the table there. Played a couple times, and it was just Laura and I were like, "We need to get out of this quacks thing." But then I ended up winning like 4 games in a row, and Laura was like, "Nope, have to go out on a more even keel here." So she finally came back with a big win last night, and so I think we're gonna clear the table of the quacks and move on to games that we know and love or haven't tried yet. So it's a nice turn here on a Sunday to look forward to a whole different set of games. And what about you? What's been on your table recently?
Well, so Dale and I were going through the games that were on our table. We had played Endangered just to kind of get the sense of the co-op. And the first time we played it, we were unsuccessful in saving the tigers, and we were very sad.
Yes.
And then so we played it again the next day, and lo and behold, we were able to save the tigers, and we didn't have to do it by adding additional players. And I can't remember if I told you, prior to that, we were playing Viticulture as a co-op.
Okay.
And we like it, but what we discovered is 2-player, it's not that exciting because for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's hard to really mount enough resources to win the game as a co-op with 2 players.
Okay.
But I also think that we were somewhat handicapped because we're 2 players who are used to playing against each other, and it took a minute to get in our brain, oh wait, we're supposed to be helping each other. And that could have been part of the challenge. So we haven't given up on it. We've thought about maybe playing them with like each of us playing two families or something like that. But those were sort of our games. And then I had to go out of town for the week. So I was in Atlanta all week, and I stayed at this really interesting hotel called the Moxie. Now, the Moxie is a Marriott property, not a sponsor. And it's an interesting hotel in the sense that you walk in, and you know how most hotels kind of have like your counter, and you go to the counter and you say, I'm here to check in, and they give you your key, etc. Well, this is a little different. You walk in, and it's like you're walking into the club.
Oh, okay.
And you walk up to the bar, and you check in the bar, and they give you your key, and they give you a drink. Okay. If you're old enough, I guess.
Right on, yeah.
And then you look around the lobby, and they had this huge, 48 by 48 Monopoly set. They had this huge 48 by 48 Scrabble set. They had a chessboard. They had these huge Uno cards. And so that was really setting up like a gaming vibe. And there's like a big, little shuffleboard table that almost looked like an air hockey table, if you can imagine what that looks like.
3D Catan, I'm hoping?
No 3D Catan, sorry. But anyway, so the reason I bring that up is I'm coming back from dinner the second night, I guess, and I get off the elevator, and I see this couple over at the shuffleboard table, and the guy is wearing an Invulnerable Vagrant shirt, which, of course, is the Pumat Soul from Campaign 2 of Critical Role, where they go to get magic items and stuff. And in one of my previous campaigns, I actually had Pumat Soul make a cameo, and I did a voice. And so I started talking to the couple in the Pumat Soul voice, just to be weird. And it worked because the guy's like, "You're the only person that's ever gotten this shirt." Well, long story short, this couple had come up from Orlando. They were there. He was there taking a class at Georgia Tech, and they said, "Hey, we're going to play Farkle later. Do you want to join us?"
Ooh, okay.
So I joined them for Farkle, and just had a great time. I had never played the game before, and of course, it's a dice game, and
dice chucking, yeah.
I actually won. Which was a surprise. But it was just kind of fun, catching up and meeting some new people that were passionate about board games and stuff, and I was able to share with them some games that I thought was interesting, and they shared with me some things. It was just a really nice encounter. So it was just kind of cool how to be in Atlanta and meet another couple and just sort of get a sense of, how gaming sort of draws us together. So that's part of my story for the week.
I love it. I was at a hotel in Chicago many years ago, and there was a couple playing Lord of the Rings, the card game,
Mhm.
and I kind of drifted over, and we did sort of a similar, you know what I know that you know that, and we ended up playing Hanabi that night, and they were there from the UK. He was going to the World Championship of Lord of the Rings, and so. Um, yeah, it's nice, particularly if you're looking for games like these. You'd think, we don't usually see either that kind of T-shirt or those kinds of games on a table in a hotel. It's nice to
Yeah.
find games and think of games as a way that really pulls people together. That's super nice. I like that story. That's fantastic.
So I came back and we didn't start playing Farkle here, although
Ah, yes.
I may be ready for it. You never know.
Give dice.
But we continued on. We one of the games that we had played before I left, and we played it when I got back, was Fjords. I had backed the Kickstarter, and so we really, we get a lot of joy out of the tile placement type games, particularly when they're the hexagon style that you get with sort of like the Cascadias and the Calicos, etc. And so we started playing that, and we find that we kind of like that, and we're always amazed because Beth Sobel did the artwork for both Cascadia and Fjords, which is
Right.
interesting because it's two different publishers, so it's always fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still learning how all the dots connect, I guess, and it's always amazing to me how they can make a tableau that, regardless of how you put it together, it's going to fit. You can make something
Right.
interesting out of it. It doesn't just go one way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's a science behind that. There's probably some computer generation as well that makes that happen. But I don't know. It's just
That's
pretty
awesome.
interesting to me. And then we, as long as we were taking care of our wall of shame, which for the uninitiated is the board games that are still in shrink wrap on the shelf, we pulled off. I pulled off Glenmore 2, the Chronicles,
Oh, yeah.
and
Okay.
thought we would dive into that yesterday. And I think I spent more time unpacking everything and getting it organized. So we did not get on to that yesterday, but we did get on to Chronicles of Crime.
Oh, okay.
And we solved the tutorial, and we got a 54 out of 100 on the first encounter. So we have to try that again. I'm not real happy about that.
Yeah, that's not a good opening. Yeah.
But we're interested in Chronicles. We're trying to find more, co-ops. They say that's a 1 to 4 player game. I think you could probably play like 6+ people on that. I don't think you would. Well, the way we did it is I put the app on my iPad. And then we're in a room with a very big TV. So when you're scanning the room, I am mirroring the iPad to the TV. So I'm kind of looking around the room and everybody can look at the TV. So you could actually do that with a larger group and catch more clues and stuff like that. But it was fun. It was the first, we've had it for a while. We knew we would like it. We just haven't gotten around to playing it. And we were like, you know what? We're going to play it.
Cool.
So.
And it sounds like introductory scenarios are supposed to be solvable at a pretty good rate. And then,
the same. I mean, I got the right murderer. I just didn't solve the rest of the case. There was some nuance to it. So.
Yep. I've been there. We've done a couple of games like that where you get to the end and like, okay, oh, right. I forgot the 6 other categories I was supposed to be solving for as well. Oh, well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds like a good fun stuff. And so you're going to Glenmore this evening, you think? Or
I don't know. It depends if we can get a watch it played in. That's always the key for us. I think John Gets Games has a good shorter video on how to play. The fact that they had to give me a video on how to unbox it and organize it makes me a little But I think once we kind of get the base game, I think it's because they're called the Chronicles, so they give you like 8 or 9 scenarios above the base game that you can play. And I think just getting those organized were the challenge, because you look at it and it's kind of intimidating because there's all this content. But I think once you realize you can kind of consume it in bite-sized chunks, I think that'll help.
Yeah, that is good. Sort of like, was it Fog of Love has lots of different scenarios. And, we're going to just play one of these at a time. It'll be fine. And I saw that, going back to Gen Con for a little bit, Fog of Love has a Love in Lockdown expansion that was coming out. So that seemed pretty hilarious.
Is that the baby expansion? I'm sorry, that was a joke. I shouldn't have said that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's funny. Before we get to Gen Con, and I do want to get there, it was funny. I've been traveling a lot the last couple of weeks, and I met with an old colleague of mine. Was telling him about the podcast, and he goes, "Oh, like you guys talk about games like the kinds of like the tea game you would find in Cracker Barrel, the golf tee game, you know, where it's on the triangle and you're trying to work that out." I'm like, "Wow, I can't believe we never thought about that." So I thought that was kind of fun. That was exactly where where his brain went when I told him a little bit about what we were trying to do here, which I thought was pretty good.
Okay. Puzzles, but all right. Yeah, sure.
Anyway.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, and it's interesting because I was thinking about this sort of taking Quacks off the table. It's been on the table for a long time. This is our 72nd play of it.
Wow.
And
you sound like you keep track.
Pardon?
You sound like you keep track.
I do it in Board Game Geek.
Yeah, I know.
So it's kind of fun to just keep track of these things. And we should be sure to touch on the guild here before we
yes, absolutely, for sure.
Finish the end of these. But it's an interesting space where you're with your partner this, and I think for both of us, our wives are the people that we play the most with, right? This is the kid is in bed. Let's do something to kind of unwind instead of just sitting in front of the TV. Let's sit across from each other and do something interesting. But it's a funny space to get into where you're like, well, we'd like to put this game away, but I just won by like a lot, and it just leaves a kind of bad taste to say, well, now we're just gonna we're gonna end this on this gigantic win. And the kind of sort of emotional space where you get to like, well, let's find a balance. Let's find a way where we're both happy when this goes back onto the shelf. And I think that was a kind of an interesting journey over the past couple days, sort of talking that through and thinking that through and saying, yeah, let's. And then I was talking with Laura saying, well, I'm sure what you don't want me to do is say, well, I'm not going to buy any chips this time. I could buy, I've got 20, but I'm not going to buy anything. She's like, yeah, if you did that, I'd kill you. All right, yeah. Don't throw the game, make it do the thing you're supposed to do, play it and play to win. But yeah, that sort of space, it's an interesting one that we were dealing with.
So you started to go down the path of the guild. Why don't we talk about that, and then we'll kind of segue into Gen Con.
Sure. We are Guild 4084, as I recall. Yep, 4084. You can go to Board Game Geek and look through the guilds there under Lay It on the Table, or you can Google Lay It on the Table Board Game Geek Guild, and you can find ways to interact with us there, send us notes, post some things. We'll try to post some things there as well, I suspect. But that's a whole new thing that just started up. So just got that approved last week. And so we're still figuring out what that's going to look like, but it's available now. Guild 4084. There's a lot of guilds there. So
4084. That's awesome. Yeah, no. Hey, we're in quadruple digits.
Yes.
There we go. So I know I wanted to talk a little bit about Gen Con, and it's obviously we're not there. I do have some friends from the local game store that did go, so hopefully we can get them on in the next couple of episodes to maybe talk about their experiences at Gen Con. I think that would be fun to kind of dive into. But I think what's really interesting is from everything that I've read, the Gen Con has returned to Indianapolis at full capacity. And when you think about what we've been through over the last couple of years, anything being back to full capacity like that is a sign that certain things are getting back to normal. Although, from what I understand, it has been mandatory masks inside the facility.
Yeah, I've seen posts and people having pictures of that. So that seems like a wise precaution.
Yep. Nope. 100%.
Yep.
There've been a number of articles about the most interesting things that have come out of Gen Con. There's one that really I started looking at in prepping for today, and I was like, no, all of these are roll and writes, and I'm just not a roll and write kind of person. But evidently, roll and writes are coming out, and it's probably due to the fact that we've been in pandemic that roll and writes have become so popular. But it's just not something that really grabs me. Do you have any thoughts on roll and writes?
Yeah, there are some that I have really enjoyed, and I kind of like the flip and write a little bit more. But I mean, if you want to play Yahtzee by yourself, that's certainly a thing you can do. And there are some that seem more compelling than others. I like the idea of the super scale pinball. That seems like a fun one that has kind of some nice thematic elements into it. I like the cartographers just because it was this idea that you're going to be writing a map as you've flipped up these cards with polyomino shapes on them, and then every so often a monster shows up, so you get to interact by actually handing your map to somebody else, and they draw the monster. So I thought that was pretty good. Um, Otherwise, yeah, it's not it's not a vibe that has really got me. I saw one of the ones that's coming out is a Twilight Imperium roll and write,
Yep,
and
that's
I
yep.
thought, dear God, why? Why did that have to happen?
Yeah, and I guess I guess it's one of those parts of game. The thing I love about gaming is that there's so many genres within the genre.
Right.
There's the whole idea of Warhammer. There's D&D. There's the Vampire Masquerade, Cthulhu. Just that's in the RPG world, and then in the board game variants, you have a lot of different variations, the engine builders, the collector sets, etc.
Yeah, and you can break them up by either mechanisms or
Sure.
by theme and setting, right? Yeah.
So I think that anything that brings people into gaming, it's just not something that I'm attracted to because I think I told you. I can't remember if we've done the podcast. I don't think we have. I was in a game store in Durham a couple weeks ago. I was in Atomic Empire, and which is a great store. Love the store. It's in Durham. If you're ever there, definitely check it out. They had a copy of Charterstone, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, what are the Stonemaier games I don't have? And so I was looking at it, and I had it in the buggy. There's not really a buggy. I had them hold it for me up front, but I was gonna buy it. But then I realized it was a game where when you put stickers on the board, they're there, and that's for your next playthrough as well. And I was like,
Yep, the whole legacy thing. Yeah.
I don't want that. I want something that I can, I want replayability. Because number one, I know the first time through I'm not that smart. But so I ended up putting it back, and I ended up not getting any game while I was there. I did get a couple of puzzles because we're going to the beach soon, and my wife wanted some puzzles, and they had a great selection of Ravensburger puzzles with the 300. They had 300, 500, 1,000 count, and so we got a couple of 300s because we're going with some kids and stuff, and so we thought that would be kind of fun to do.
Pretty straightforward puzzles there, yeah.
But anyway, so back to Gen Con, of course. The roll and write. But there are a few things that I noticed that were announced that really got my attention. And the first one that I was like, ooh, did not know about this. How did I miss this announcement all the way around? And I know you're thinking I'm going to say, like Critical Role Clue, but I'm not. There's an expansion coming for Meadow called Downstream.
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to be out in Q4, and it's being highlighted at Gen Con this week. So I was very excited about that. Rebel Studios has evidently had a really great role with this title. And I love this title for a number of reasons. I love the mechanics of the game. I love the fact that it's designed and published in Poland and not another part of the world. Not that I have a problem with that other part of the world. It's just that the aesthetic and the aesthetic of the artwork and the quality of the production, you notice the difference.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm curious to see if the expansion is done the same way. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We'll see. But I'm excited about that.
Well, you've enjoyed Meadow a lot, right?
Yes, we have. We love that game. It's.
And is that Phil Walker Harding or?
You're gonna ask.
Thinking Tiles. And all that good stuff.
No, because it's a card game more. It's
okay.
Klemens Kalicki out of Poland. I'm probably blowing that name off the table. But yeah, no, Meadow is designed and it's the native language is designed in is Polish. Okay. And then it is localized into the rest of the world. So it's a really nice in fact it's when you go to their when you get the book, they actually have instructions in Polish as well as English. Nice. And I think I spent some time in Poland a few years ago, and it's a lovely country, wonderful people.
Not.
Yeah,
this is news to me. Okay.
I was over there for work for about 2 to 3 weeks in Krakow, and just really fell in love with the friendliness of the people, and And I was just that was one of the things that drew me to the game, was that it's designed in Poland. So
Cool. Yeah.
um, the other thing the other thing I saw is that there's a new game coming out called Fit to Print that kind of falls into that same kind of classical Calico-ish kind of game. I also think it's great because we're going to teach people what newspapers were, because I don't think we have them anymore.
Well, it sort of reminded me of sort of Galaxy Trucker, the 19th century news, or 20th century newspaper. Just because it sounds like there's a bit of frantic chaos at the beginning when you're putting everything together and you have to make sure that you have all the elements, and then you sit down and then score it, right? Like, okay. And I'm sure you're not driving, you're not flying your newspaper out and back to deliver goods in space. But no, I saw that one too. That was definitely catching my attention. One of the things that I was noticing is there's this couple of pair of games that caught my attention. Birds of a Feather by Snowbrite Studios.
Okay.
Teal Fristo, which is, what a fun name. And Renegade Games has Birdwatcher from Zakir Jaffrey. And I was like, how long did it take to get these, bird games out after Wingspan blew the door off of everything? And there's a couple of others. Let's see. There's a company whose name escapes me, but they have a whole series of games about science, right? So there's one about the periodic table. There's one about
they're the same publisher that do Genotype. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we love that.
Yep. So Genotype and other cell biology. There are 2 cell biology games, all kinds of fun stuff. I always thought that's hilarious.
Well, it was funny too because I had just read about Amygdala, which is one, but it's not by that publisher. It's by Game Brewer.
Yeah, this is Genius Games. Yeah. Cellulose is one of the ones. Yeah.
Yep. No, Genius Games are great, and I love them because they're. When we first got Genotype, we had backed the Kickstarter.
Okay.
It came, and we're playing it, and of course, my youngest daughter has a degree in biology, and we're going through it. We're playing it, and we handed her one of the rule books, and the rule books is also explaining the science behind what you're doing.
Nice.
And the accuracy of the science. And she's like, this is like reading my textbook. This is great. She was like, oh, this is fantastic. So, and we had gotten her periodic, the game, that she used promptly as a study tool.
Nice.
So.
Yeah, no, it looked like, the cover art, all the stuff suggests that it really is. It's like, hey, here are these processes that you can kind of gamify them. So we're just going to do that, see what we can do. That looked pretty awesome.
So the other day I was in the game store, and there were not one but 2 people playing Great Western Trail.
Ah, yes.
And wasn't familiar with it until that day, and they're both playing it. And now I see that there's already an expansion, Great Western Trail Argentina, coming out. And so I can't decide if it's a game I want to try or not yet, because I tend to be like, ooh, everybody's playing it. I must get it. And then I'm like, let's wait.
It's an interesting game. There's a bunch of different sort of mechanisms that are sort of locked together. And the first edition of the game, which I have, has the terrible cover art and also the terrible sort of racist part in the middle of the game where you are attacked by Native Americans, Indians, they even call them. Germans not really being super up on how to think about post-colonial life in a lot of ways. But the second edition has them changed to either bandits or outlaws, and we've removed the racism, but still it's a sort of filtering out there.
Okay, so it's a reprint in many ways then, kind of like Libertalia? Okay, because I wasn't familiar with the original.
Yep. So there's that edition that I have. There's the second edition that takes care of the racism, and then Argentina does different stuff. And I'm not as familiar with that version of the game.
Well, speaking of potentially insensitive topics in a board game theme, there is a game coming out from Capstone, Catherine, the Cities of the Tsarina.
Oh yeah.
Of course, Catherine the Great being one of those wonderful Prussian monarchs that ended up ruling Russia for a period of time.
Yes.
I'll let that sink in for a little bit. But obviously, to me, it kind of looks like, the Castles of Mad King Ludwig meets Rails and Trails or something like that. But it's interesting to see her as getting her due as a board game theme.
Mm-hmm. It's and I was looking that Alderac AEG has they've had for many years a game called Cat Lady, which is
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with it. Yep.
yeah, super fun game. And now they're bringing out Dog Lover. It took them a while to balance things out
See,
for the animals there.
that's important.
And yeah, and just to continue with this theme of, well, this isn't actually nature, but there's this game that has been on my mind for a long time called Cosmic Frog by the company Devious Weasel Games. I think it's fantastic.
I love that name.
And the art in this is amazing. I'm not sure that the gameplay stands up to it, but you are playing a 2-mile tall cosmic frog who's eating things to grab terrain off a board. So
I think I've fought that frog in Elden Ring, but you don't like to talk about video games, so I won't go there. Fair. No, that sounds pretty interesting.
I mean, the art and the idea of this 2-mile tall amphibian, I love it.
Don't give a DM ideas.
Yeah.
So it's interesting though, because as I've gone through the different articles, one of the things I keep looking for is what are people consistently excited about. And I think Great Western Trail has shown up on a couple of lists. The Meadow downstream showed up on a couple of lists. There was a couple of others that have popped up on a couple of lists. One of them is Terracotta Army.
I've seen,
which looks like it could be pretty interesting. And I don't know if I told you, the other day I was in the game store here and they were playtesting Basilica, which is another Polish designer who evidently lives here in Charlotte, and they were playtesting at the game store. So Basilica will be out. I don't know if I'm sure they're playing at Gen Con as well, but it's supposed to be released in September.
Okay.
Something that's not on the list. It's just something that I meant to mention earlier. But I do notice that there are two, you were talking about the colonial thing. There are two board games coming out that kind of go pre-colonial. One is I'm probably going to say this wrong, Founders of Technichin. That's probably not the right word there.
Is this the Teotihuacan?
Teotihuacan. I'm reading it wrong because I have bad eyes. And then the Red Burnous, Algeria, 1857, which I guess is not pre-colonial, but
it's set in that kind of thing.
Algeria, 1857 is post-Napoleonic. Therefore, it is post-colonial.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of ones that are sort of set in an early Stone Age kind of place as well. And none of the names of them are coming to mind immediately. But if I can find one, I'd be happy to talk a little bit more about it. But apparently I'm not going to be able to.
It's all good.
So here we go. Fire and Stone. This is a Klaus-Jürgen Riede game from Pegasus Spiele, and the little tag: scout new lands, harvest nuts and mushrooms, and finally build villages. So go out, take over, do some things, and that should be interesting. That certainly had that on my mind. And in terms of, Laura and I have been discussing this a little bit, like ways you can avoid doing the colonial, post-colonial kind of stuff. There's a Mistwind from First Fish Games, Adrian Adamescu and Daryl Andrews. It feels very much, get into the world, expand out, build networks, deliver goods to expand further and so on. Feels very 19th century, 18th, 19th century. But Mistwind is a fantasy realm, and the thing that you are using to transport your goods and the networks that you're using are giant flying whales. So I guess giant flying beasts is kind of my theme for the morning.
Are the whales bigger than the frog?
I don't think they are.
Okay, just thought I
But
would.
they fly, so that's cool,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. Yeah. It's different. It's a good thing they can breathe air.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah, I don't know how they solved all of that, but it's a misty wind. Maybe it's damp enough for them. I don't know.
I feel like I'm struggling with body mass and flight and okay.
It's magic. It's magic, Joe.
I did see an article that talked about Avalon Hill being back at Gen Con. So it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like they took a break. And sometimes, publishers will scale back at a convention just for various reasons. I think there was a lot of hullabaloo about San Diego Comic-Con where DC was not as big of a presence as they've been in the past and such. And so that just happens. And I've been in a number of technology industries where, there's an ebb and flow as do we really want to. It's one of those things where if you're not there, people will talk about you, so you have to be there. But the return on investment for some conventions can have variances from year to year. So people make some strategic decisions.
As a publisher, I have the same. We rarely went to conferences or conventions to make money, but to be present and to be talked about and to
exactly
show your new stuff. Yeah.
But so Avalon Hill being there, which of course is part of the Hasbro family of gaming empire.
Oh, that's right.
So you have Avalon Hill, you have Wizards of the Coast, you have, of course, Hasbro. They've got the movie coming out. And now they have a board game. One of the things that they're featuring is the new board game, The Yawning Portal. That'll be out in Q1 2023. For those of us, who are just like, I'm sure, just take my money now kind of people, like the aforementioned Critical Role clue game that may or may not be on pre-order for me at my friendly local game store. But not for me, for my wife, because she loves game clue. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I hadn't dived too much into that because I figured you would. Can you tell me a little more about it?
I mean, it's obviously, the On Portal for the uninitiated is the sort of the hub of all activity on the Sword Coast and the Forgotten Realms side of D&D. And so what they've done is they've taken this into more of a board game type of mechanism. I'm just kind of glancing at it for the first time as I'm kind of going through this. So I didn't do the deep dive on it, but it looks like it's got a lot of, the thing, we've talked about this before. I think that as everybody sort of talked about rising prices in terms of inflation, there is a cost of transportation for most of these games coming from China. Obviously, there are things in the headlines that make me think, that's probably going to be later than I thought, And I think that's going to be an interesting it'll be, number one, it'll be interesting for me to see, and this is going to be pseudo-political, I apologize. It's going to be very interesting to see if board game publishers begin to look for alternative production points that bring things to market in a more stable way. It's number one. We'll have to wait and see on that. But the reason I bring that up is that I'm looking at the picture of the game, and it looks like there's a lot of robust pieces. And I can't tell. I mean, they look very acrylic, plasticky, which would fit the Avalon Hill Hasbro vibe. But it looks like a lot. So I like that when these games come out, they're kind of, I started this complaining about all the content that was in the Glenmore game. But I like it when it's a beefy game and there's a lot of good, things in there for you to work with, because, when you're paying anywhere from $50 to $100 for a game, cardboard deteriorates. And I don't know if you live in the South like we do, but humidity, not a friend of cardboard.
Oh.
In my gaming room, I have a dehumidifier that runs constantly.
Wow.
And I still suck out about a gallon of water every other day.
Jesus.
Yeah, part of it's the room that I have as my gaming room, but it's still, I try to keep the humidity in here at a certain level because this is where I keep all the cardboard.
Sure.
So.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, it's only because it's July, August that it's that. We usually in when we're like in September to June, it's more like once a week.
Okay.
Well, it's just that time of year.
Jeez, wow.
Yeah. It's what happens when you convert a garage into a game room. Fair.
That would,
Yeah.
yep, yep, that makes sense. That makes perfect
So
sense.
you would never know that this is a garage.
No, I
Well,
wouldn't.
it's because it's not anymore.
And there you go.
See?
And I've never seen it beyond this little portal.
That's fair.
Into your,
That's fair.
So I couldn't say.
Yeah.
So speaking of other games that sort of showed up on a lot of places, and that certainly has my attention as a former publisher, is the Gutenberg game, and that looks from Portal Games. So if you're looking for other games from the Slavic region, they are. I think they're in the Czech Republic. Portal Games they are, and Gutenberg. I mean, I don't need. It's about Gutenberg. I write. This is what I want to see to begin with, right?
Oh, this is nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Yep.
it's new, or it's because I'm.
I mean, I think it's getting its.
It's getting its due.
Yeah, it's
Got it.
getting its. Everybody wants it on the dance card.
Gotcha.
So I think it came out last year, but this is really the year that they're pushing it. I think.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm looking at. So it's available now. We don't have to wait for it, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is not when we have to wait for Q4 for it to.
Nice. Yeah. No.
show up.
I didn't know if it was. Are you? Because it's interesting. I was looking at this. As you said that, the game, and I know nothing about it other than it's called My Father's Work, which immediately you think it's, that must be a religious game. But then you get into it and like, no, it's a Halloween game, and my father could be somebody else. So that looks kind of interesting. And that's, where we talked about this previously, and I'm sure we'll talk about it as we get into October. We like games that are more kind of spooky when you get into that time of year. Like we like different ones. And I just picked up a copy of Blood on the Clock Tower that I'm hoping to do as we get a little closer.
And they've got a third edition of Betrayal at House on the Hill coming out. So it looks
hopefully with better components than because we got the Scooby-Doo version of it and was like, we're very intrigued by the game, very disappointed with the content.
And I think one of the things that the write-up said was that it smoothed out some of the processes. It looks to be like I had the first edition for a while, and that was the one where you could get the pool on the third floor, and there was just some sort of chaos with that. So it looks like they've tried to streamline it a bit, and I'll be interested to see what people think about it when it's out and chatter starts up again.
Yeah, because when I looked at the Scooby-Doo, I thought it was a Scooby-Doo mechanism. And then I went and looked at the second edition of the game. There was an open copy in a local store. And they give you this, this piece of cardboard, and then they give you this thing that you're supposed to pinch onto it to keep your score for each individual.
Yes.
And all it does is ruins the cardboard.
Yep.
And they've pseudo fixed it with an app that you can download and then track everything on the different variations on the app. But it was just, for what you paid for it, I was like, I'm destroying the game by playing the game. And I was not excited by that. And I thought it was just because, it's Scooby-Doo. They didn't invest as much in it. And then I looked at the base game, and I was like, no, this is just cheap production, to be quite frank.
That's what they do, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's unfortunate. I'm glad to hear that there's a third edition coming out. I'll be curious to see if they have realized that this is not acceptable.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that it sounds like, Betrayal is supposed to be kind of a lighthearted, we'll explore a little bit, and then the bad thing happens and it becomes the haunt, and the game changes, and it's kind of supposed to be a little loose and chaotic. But the rules, the first and second edition, I think, were kind of, if you were looking for that kind of experience, it felt like there were more rules and more things to keep track of and more things to do than someone who's a kind of casual gamer who wants to pick up something fun for the end of the night or whatever. They would bounce off it pretty hard. And they open the rule book and go, oh shit, this is going to take a little while, right? And so I'm hoping they've made this a little bit, more mellow. But speaking of big, I don't think it's tied to an IP, that one, but Villainous. I don't know if you saw this. Star Wars Villainous: Power of the Dark Side. You're wearing
I did see it.
You're wearing the Stormtrooper shirt right now.
We were in the game store last Sunday, and they
Ah.
had it there, but I didn't buy it. We like Villainous. We have the Disney versions. I think the game is
Yep.
the game is the game is the game. I'm not sure if I need another. I didn't buy the Marvel.
I got the Marvel, skip the Disney.
Yeah, we got the Disney, and then the Marvel came out, and I'm like, Star Wars maybe, but I would have to be. I would have to be back into playing the Disney one on a regular on more of a regular basis to say, okay, now I want to add this variant to it.
No.
But that's just me.
Yeah. Nope. That makes perfect sense.
And for what it's worth, I don't buy every D&D thing that comes out either. I mean, they came out with the Spelljammer, and I was like, that's not my flavor, which is fine.
Sure.
So
and that's the beautiful thing about D&D is that it's a big enough sandbox. There can be a lot of different flavors.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I love that. I love that all of that can come together. So I think Gen Con has been pretty interesting. I'm glad to see that there are a lot of titles coming out. We'll be kind of curious to see what really sucks up all the air out of the room.
It was interesting to see all of the sort of tie-ins, Stranger Things, the My Little Ponies card game, the deck building game, a bunch of other just IPs that were lots of new TV shows and stuff. And I wasn't kind of used to thinking about Gen Con as a place where they brought that out, but it was an interesting this time looking at this list, seeing all of these kinds of very mainstream, Avalon Hill, Wizards, Hasbro, all of this kind of out there, and thinking, well, that's not something I was used to seeing, and kind of fun to seeing that and thinking that maybe the audience for Gen Con has gotten large enough that Hasbro feels like rolling those kinds of kids games out, at that event is worth it. So that's an interesting development. I'll want to see how that keeps going over the next couple of years.
Well, that's a very fair observation because, one of the things that I've noticed in the game store that I hang out in and the other game stores I've been in recently is that there are a lot of 30-somethings with their kids in the store.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, like, so for example, I know that you have brought your daughter into the realm of gaming, and that is just, a byproduct that, I grew up with it. That's what brought me into it. Yeah. What was really interesting was I had a conversation with a gentleman who was brought in by his son.
Oh, wow.
And his son is interested in D&D and a number of things, but then he was gravitating to some of the other games, and it was just sort of like, I love that it's an intergenerational kind of draw that can get you excited about, what can be on the table or what can be in the imagination from that particular perspective. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing that I think is interesting is, you talk about these IP tie-in kinds of things. And I think there's some pluses or minuses to that, depending upon what it is and how well it's executed. I think that really what it comes down to. It was interesting. I was watching on YouTube last night. There's a guy. I believe it's WASD. It's like the keyboard, how you move things around on the keyboard. Oh, okay. He does a lot of Dungeons and Dragons kinds of things, and he was talking about the latest version of Stranger Things in the episode of Dungeons and Dragons. There's evidently only one in this season. And because they keep the game so they juxtapose the game, spoiler alert, with a basketball game, and they're both intense activities. There was some discussion: is this an accurate depiction of D&D, or is it, because as we've all been in the shopping episode, that it's not always intense. I mean, you and I play in a game, and last week it was not. It was more story. It was less. I don't even think you guys got into a battle last week.
And we've had a couple of episodes that are like that.
Yeah,
it's like it's fine.
And I think that's part of the thing that I think that when you're trying to depict D&D, letting people understand that sometimes your entire episode is just moving from place to place.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the IP. Like I said, I want to see how it's executed. But there are two other games that sort of caught my attention.
Okay.
Because, the idea of a spooky game. There
Right.
is this one called Weirdwood Manor by Grey Ridge Games.
Okay.
It's a co-op.
Nice.
You're pitting the players against different monsters, fey monsters, in a strange manner that seems
Okay.
to change, kind of like inside of Hogwarts can change, I guess. So
Nice.
I like it because, kind of like Horrified, we like the when you're doing the spooky stuff, it's kind of nice when you're all doing that. And then there's another one called Come Together by Chili Fox Games. It's more of a 1960s kind of vibe, worker
Yeah.
placement. Could be interesting. Don't know.
That looked pretty fun. There's one Sky Mines that's coming out, and this one is interesting because it has a sort of vexed history. It began life 6 years ago as Mombasa, and about mining in Africa and this post-colonial, and it was set in an era when there was a lot of wars and a lot of people dying, and it kind of glossed over all of the history,
Mm-hmm.
and it was an early title for really getting a lot of criticism for not paying attention to the history that it was depicting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
There
the
it is.
pardon?
I'm sorry. I thought I had seen it earlier. I spoke out of turn. Keep going.
Oh, no worries. And so Sky Mines, and this is Alexander Pfister, who's the same guy who did Great Western Trail. He said, "Okay, nope, I hear what you're saying," and so they went back to the drawing board. And I think Mombasa is, no longer in print, but Sky Mines is the one now that's taking. And Mombasa had really great mechanisms, from what I understand. It was people really liked the game, but were kind of put off very strongly by the setting of it. And so Sky Mines has kind of the same, very much the same mechanisms. It's supposed to be a fantastic game. I don't know. I haven't played it. But it's interesting that now that we've got this one out now or coming soon, the way that it responded to the concerns of the public and reinvented itself to take care of those concerns.
No, and I think that makes sense, because I think on the one hand, so I majored in history. I think it's very important that we don't forget our history,
Right.
Because those who forget it are doomed to repeat it in many respects. But I also appreciate that you don't have to go through a game that relives it in order to do that. Now,
well, and the thing that they did is that they didn't even relive it. They kind of glossed over it. They kind of made a bunch of it disappear. And I think there was a short bit of text that said, "Hey, here's some of the stuff that was going on," but then went ahead and just moved forward. And people said, "No, you can't just wave your hands and make that disappear. You have to deal with it."
Kind of like all the happy people in the old Lipton tea box that really were not happy.
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So,
Understood.
But it was just interesting to see that story. I think
happening. it's interesting because, if I'm a game designer, what am I really designing? Am I designing the art in the story, or am I designing the mechanism that makes it fun? And then what can be overlay? To a degree, it's like saying, I have made this software. Now, how can I skin it to make it interesting?
Yep.
And I can make My Little Pony on it, or I can make Star Wars on it. And, Villainous is a great example. Villainous is the mechanic is the mechanic. And then you have the user experience, and and part of that is the artwork. And that's kind of, when we go back to you were talking about all the plethora of the birds.
Yes.
The plethora of birds. And, I think Wingspan is such a lightning in the bottle kind of thing. But it's nice that people are driving into the whole other ways to experience gaming, because I think, I'm trying to set up this idea. So I belong to a Methodist church here in town, and we've been trying to get people back into small groups. And what I said is, look, I want to do like a tabletop fellowship where it's not a Bible study. We're just going to get together. We're going to have fellowship. We're going to meet at a game store and we're going to learn games. And the whole idea is we've been in pandemic for 3 years is that I want to get to know you. And this is a great way to do it in a very non-threatening kind of way.
Yes.
You know, and it doesn't even have to be thematic. I mean, now there are things you can do, like the Methodists have this thing called the social principles that talk about the environment. So if I wanted to do that, I could pull out oceans, or I could pull out, Spill, which is a new game coming out from Gen Con.
Endangered.
Yeah, or Endangered, exactly, and make it about that. But at the same time, I'm just trying to get people interacting in a different way that doesn't involve, other things. And so the challenge is most games are 4 to 5 player.
Right.
And I'm trying to find the 6+ player games.
Yeah.
But I've just finally resolved that I can't put that kind of lens on it. What I need to do is just rent a table, see who shows up. If I have more people than one table, set up another table and just get another game out and just kind of go back and forth. But anyway, that's it. The point there being is that there's just looking for different ways to make this game, this hobby rather, accessible and useful in different ways as we're coming out of a pandemic. Because I think a lot of people could be drawn to it as well.
Yes.
I feel like that was a non sequitur. Sorry.
No, I think it's good.
All right, so what I'd love to do is see what, let's find out who we know that's made it to Gen Con. I know at least 2 or 3 people. Love to have them on in the next at least the next go around. I'll see what I can do to get some people might be interested in doing that. And
Awesome.
And in fact, there's one person I'm going to reach out to that I know was doing some demos there, so I'd love to maybe get their perspective. So I'll reach out to them and see if they're open to it. And but that's all I have for today.
That's all I got.
All right. Well, James, take us home.
Thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Engelhardt, and I'm hoping that all your tiebreakers break your way.
And of course, as always, I'm Joe Mahaffey, and I am not bored. I am bored gaming. See you next time, everybody.
Bye.